When you think titanium nitride is all the whistle and chisel? Nah. Let me introduce DLC. Welcome back to episode 7 of our B7 build-up. So what is DLC? It actually means the coating itself is as hard as diamond or close to, and at the same time it had the lubrication characteristic of carbon powder, which means the coating is super durable, but at the same time it is also very smooth. Compared with titanium nitride, it's like a next generation coating. So we are going to build our shocks using T-Works DLC coating shock shafts. And at the same time, I'm also going to put in all the goodies from T-Works to build our shocks. To start the build, we first start with the piston. I've used some Sharpie to draw some colors to distinguish the piston because the front and the rear pistons are different, hence the 1.6 and the 1.9. We are going to use the shims that come with the shaft. And for the screws here, make sure we have put enough thread lock. We'll have thread lock on the screws. And now we are going to tighten it. Now after you tighten the screws, make sure the piston must still be able to spin freely. And that's good to go. Now I have laid out all the X-ring and shock spacer and the top and bottom cap. Here and we're going to put all these parts into the shock bodies and make sure we have placed them in the correct order. And I'm going to build one and show you. We are going to use some green slime on the X-ring, and that will improve the longevity of the X-ring. Okay, first we're going to put in the top cap spacer, and it's directional in here. So make sure you get the direction right. Push it in like this. Next we're going to fit our X-ring with green slime on it already. And then we put the middle spacer in and use a tweezer to push it in. Push it all the way down, and then we can fit another X-ring. Then lower cap spacer. Now we're going to use our T-Works options, beautifully made in aluminum and anodized in black. Just screw down the cap. And this part is done. Next, we're going to put the shock shaft in. And before we do that, again, we're going to put some grease on the thread here, so that when you push down the shock shaft, you won't damage the X-ring. Now, this is actually quite essential. If you do not have green slime, then you can put some silicone oil on it. That will also do the job. And now, we can put the shock shaft in. Now that the shocks are built, we can now start the bleeding process. Now first of all, we're going to put the silicone oil in. And just pump it up a few times to let all the air bubbles trapped underneath the piston to come out. And repeat that on all 4 shocks. Before we start to bleed the shock, I would also like to show you some more goodies from T-Works. And this is the shock spring cup, which are available in +7, +5, and 0 configuration. And we will use this in our shock build. Now we will start to bleed the shock. First of all, we check and see the bubbles are all gone, and we are going to top it up all the way to the top. And then we will also put a drop of oil onto the shock cap. Simply put, we want to fill up the shocks with oil, and then we will tighten the shock cap completely. At this very moment, we did not fit the bleeding screw yet. Oil is starting to come out a little. Get yourself some tissue. And then what you're going to do is, you can now start to push the shock shaft up. Make sure you have the screws ready to go. And then we have to push it all the way in, and you can see the oil coming out. And then we tighten the screws in. When you tighten the screw, make sure that the shock shaft is still pushing all the way in. Now you can wipe off all the excess oil, and your shocks are ready to go. Pump it a few times to check it's working correctly. Now that the shocks are finished, we can then fit the spring collar on. As you can see, it had a very nice detail with the marking etched on, and the shape make it easier for us to adjust the preload. And before we fit it on, we should put a little bit silicone oil on it. The O-ring here, just a little bit. It will be smoother to turn and easier to adjust. Now we have completed the oil shocks. Next we're going to fit it on the car, and we are getting close to finish the build. One last bit before we call it a day. This is the battery holder by tworks, made fully by carbon fiber. They actually provide more settings than the original one, because with multiple holes here, there are more adjustments that you can use on the buggy, and we are going to attach it on the buggy now. Fitment are relatively simple. As you can see, there are markings on the side of the battery holder, and there's also marking on the buggy itself. So all you have to do is adjust accordingly and make sure it's balanced on the left and the right hand side. I'm going to choose a marking here, and it's very easy. You only need to fit it with two 3x10 mm screws. Now the left hand side battery holder is done. We can now move on to the right hand side, and then we can call it complete on our buggy build. Let's check out all the beautiful options made by tworks, and I hope you have enjoyed the build as much as I do. See you all soon.